Do you just send a PDF audit to the devs?
Or should you open up a conversation with them?
Is it just between devs and SEOs?
Or should you involve the key stakeholders into the conversation as well?
Should technical SEOs know how to code?
Or maybe they should focus on bridging the gap between the devs and the search engines.
With me today is Bartosz Goralewicz. He's the CEO of Onely, a technical SEO agency based in Poland. And he and his agency does a lot of work around JavaScript SEO with lots of interesting experiments around the topic. He also has got a fantastic video setup at home and a beautiful ukulele, along with other musical instruments that he doesn't know how to play. Right through the very...
And the host of this series is Martin Split. He's a developer advocate at Google. He does a lot of magic tricks. Unfortunately, none of those will make you rank higher.
So, Bartosz, there is a thing that I want to talk to you about, and that is that I do hear and I do observe that SEOs are often struggling to actually get developers to do stuff. Is that an experience that you share? It's like you make recommendations, you give them input, and then it just doesn't happen? Or is that not something that you would say is a particular problem?
I think that you might have touched a very sensitive topic in the SEO industry, and I know where you're coming from with that. So in general, this is a problem. Some agencies solved this problem and kind of went past it. We cannot complain at all for our relationship with devs. At the same time, there's so many ways that things are done in the web development and SEO space that don't help. For example, PDF audits. Like one of the things, just to name, I think, the elephant in the room. So if you're going to create a PDF audit explaining how to fix core web vitals, not knowing their stack, not knowing their technology, not knowing their resources, how many devs are there in the team? Is it a Shopify based platform or is it a custom CMS? So, and you know, when in our experience, when you create a PDF audit and a dev is going to run into a problem, they'll skip that because there's no kind of fallback into what has to be done. So yeah, this can be unpacked so many ways.
But I know exactly what you mean. I am coming from the developer background, right? And I have worked with SEOs on both sides, both as a Google developer advocate, basically helping SEOs to do the right things and identify problems and solve problems, and both from the perspective of a developer working in a team. And the thing with the PDF report really struck a chord with me because I remember being a developer. I had so many different things on my plate already, and then out of the blue, in the middle of a sprint, someone from the SEO department descended upon me and said, Martin, here is a PDF with all the things that are wrong. Bye! And then they just flew off, and I'm like, okay. It says we're using JavaScript, which is very accurate because what we are actually building right now is a VR application that runs on your phone in the browser. You have to use JavaScript to that. So, and the recommendation is to not use JavaScript. So that's not really a thing we can do because then we don't have VR capabilities, and because then that's our product. We kind of have to build our product to have our product with the technologies that enable the features of our product. So, a lot of these things are so unhelpful and so not reflective of the circumstances that I as a developer work in.
So you work for Google. So I can ask you, before we get into how to solve this problem, let me ask you a question. Is Google okay with JavaScript?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we are okay with JavaScript.
So if I have a news website that's 100% CSR, you're going to be okay with that?
We're going to be okay with it. It might take a little longer than you would like us sometimes because we have to actually render everything. And if you are rendering specifically badly designed, then that might take us a while. But in general, if you're doing things right and if you're doing things following the best practices and making sure that you test your setup, we would be fine with that. Yeah.
So I don't want to argue with that statement. Obviously, this is not this kind of video, but just what I'm trying to say, there are so many complexities in all
Yes.
these fronts. So we
Yes.
have clients coming in with a news website that's 100% JavaScript. And, you know, there's this kind of demon in the industry that all the SEOs would say that JavaScript is evil and that JavaScript is so bad. But on the other side of things, there is Google saying we're okay with JavaScript. And there is this kind of reality when there are a lot of websites packed with JavaScript. And they're not, Google is not picking them up properly. They're not getting rendered, like, you know, all these other problems. So then we hop on a call with a dev team of our client, and they're like, but Martin said that JavaScript is okay. Why do we need to do, like, why do you want us to do server-side rendering? How do you answer? Like, you know what I mean? This makes us look like, you know, SEO wizards.
I know what you mean.
And then, you know, so all these, so these are the problems that require a lot of knowledge. We don't struggle with them as much anymore because we have so much research. We have our, you know, experiments, whatever. But if you think about that to a level when he or she can handle those questions, it is gonna take years, and it is for us. It slows down growth. And at the same time, if we're gonna look at the whole internet, you know, asking all of the SEO agencies to be as advanced as we are when we only do technical SEO and we specialize in JavaScript SEO is difficult. And so this is a crack. And I don't have any solutions, and I'm not blaming Google or anything like that. I'm just saying that this is a change that's happening, but it requires time. So there are some, maybe more than some moments when this basically requires a goodwill from both ends. So if devs want to understand that and we want to explain that, we'll make it happen.
I think there are lots of touch points where you can actually create this understanding and this cooperation, because as you said, there's like lots of complexities and lots of background and lots of considerations. So if you're asking me, and this is also tricky for us Googlers, because if you're asking me a question like, is JavaScript okay? Then in general, yes. Is it the best idea? No, not necessarily. If you can do it without JavaScript, do it without JavaScript. Server-side rendering is a recommendation that we give out as well. We need to make that more prominent in our docs. I've taken that point. But I really like the point where you said, like, also SEOs have this challenge that when you get a new SEO to join your team, they need to spend so much time on actually getting the knowledge that they need to work. Developers have the exact same challenge because, like, the entire industry, the entire ecosystem just keeps moving and keeps changing. So someone who becomes a developer today is seeing everyone else working with so many tools and so many things. And there is a tendency to skip the understanding, because most developers who have been around a couple of years have started with some tool, learned their things that this tool does well and these things that this tool does not so well. And then they might be like, oh, you're building a news website. I think in that case, with the interactivity that you described to me, we might be able to just do this better with server-side rendering. Whereas if you want a highly engaging social network, you might actually want to use client-side rendering for all the interactivity that is embedded, and that is not necessarily impairing your performance in search. So they learn these tools and they learn the trade-offs, and then they make better decisions as they grow. But then people come in and might skip the entire learning process and go like, oh, everyone uses this framework, so I'll build everything in this framework because if everyone uses it, it must be fantastic, without understanding the decision-making process behind it. And I think, which is then exacerbated, is the problem that if an SEO who cargo cults recommendations that they read or heard somewhere without understanding the background and the complexities they are encompassing, to a developer who does the same thing, then there must be a clash, because now they are running into territory where they think they know what they're doing when they actually don't really know what they're doing. Would you say that might be a challenge that we're seeing playing out?
So let me unpack that. one by one. There are a few statements within that. So for example, the way you described the news website, you and I know you for a few years. I know you're not gonna take that the wrong way. So most of our clients wouldn't understand what you said. So if you're talking to the key stakeholders, I'm assuming maybe not CEO, but CMO, someone who's making that decision along the lines, you will have this conversation. When this is one of the problems that we were doing back in the days, when we would hop on a call with 5 people from our client's company, and we would start talking to a dev, and we would lose everyone else. So simplifying that as much as possible it has to happen. So then everyone is kind of included in this conversation. But secondly, what you mentioned about dev teams, that this is so dynamic. This is also how SEO looks like. Like maybe some SEO agencies didn't realize that. I don't think too many. So if someone is coming to us with a question, can you do a JavaScript SEO, web performance, and a little bit of content marketing? So this is extremely difficult to pack in one agency and do all these things well. So I think that we slowly need to normalize using a technical SEO agency for one thing, and using a content marketing agency for something else, and just trying to branch out. So then everyone understands their goals, and then onboarding that one person is easier, because that junior SEO, she only has to learn like JavaScript SEO, web performance, whatever, crawler budget, understand those technical aspects. At the same time, some agencies want those people to also do link building and all these other aspects. So just like with devs, it got so complex that sometimes I'm looking at job offers for devs, and I'm like, what does it even mean? So
basically one job offer is an entire IT department. I love it.
Yeah. Basically, you need to divide organizations into aware in the web space and those that are not aware. And then if we're gonna, so if someone is aware of how SEO looks like, what's the difference between CSR and SSR? I'm assuming a lot of even high-level people in some organizations, like for example, Germany is pushing a lot of people in the management position to know a lot about development, which I love. Like talking to companies from Germany, most of the time they're just so aware of that. Some other companies would come to you and say, so if we're gonna fix this problem with rendering or with web performance, how much traffic can we expect and when? And that's the main topic of discussion. And this is something I'm having daily, 2-3 times a day, that I have to answer that. And this is usually showing me that and there are so many ways to answer this question. Like I never do that the same way. But anyhow, this is showing me that maybe they need a little bit more help understanding what has to be done and why it's done. Sometimes it's just beyond our scope of work. Let's call that. We cannot push them. Moving forward, so now that we have that, let's assume we have someone that's aware of or willing to learn about why we're doing that, about that why is kind of important here. Because if they only do that for traffic and that's the only KPI they look at, it's very difficult sometimes not to skip a lot of important metrics. If you look at that, you can have a ton of traffic and this is still going to be a terrible website in theory.
So are you saying that sometimes you literally have to rethink an organization's KPIs?
Yeah, very often. We would have, just to give you an example, we have a call with a massive company, and they would be asking us, what do we have to do to rank for the term houses? And, just this question lets you unpack so many problems with the whole organization. And then we usually, you don't want to offend anyone. You don't want to get, their ego involved in that. But at the same time, you want to explain that. And so that's one. Let's assume we have the stakeholders sold on the idea of what we want to do. They understand that. That's amazing. That's usually when things start to go well.
That is great, because that also unlocks the possibility to basically have them on board with whatever the dev team will be doing about
Exactly.
it. These things have basically been invisible to me, but as a developer, I just noticed that the stakeholders, the key stakeholders in the company that have influence for the dev team told me to do one thing, and then SEOs or marketing told me to do another thing. And then usually I picked the organization goals because that's what I was measured by. So you are saying by bringing in the key stakeholders and making sure that they understand what they need to look for and adjusting their KPIs, you unlock the key to actually getting the development team on board with what you're trying to accomplish.
Yes and no. So usually we don't really like as only as a technical SEO agency, we don't struggle that much to get devs on board. This is not that big of a deal with us. The problem is to for the stakeholders to understand what we want to do with them, because sometimes it's like, this is this technical SEO agency and this is our dev team. Let them have fun with this project, and like almost literally that's how that might look in some cases, and this is usually a problem. But then if we know, okay, we want to get here and this is the umbrella term, we want to have amazing web performance, we want to get rendered index quickly, whatever, and they know that this is I don't even imagine how this could go wrong, because the whole organization is just rowing in one direction. And this is our holy grail, and this is happening very, very often.
How do you get that to happen? Because I have been in so many organizations where that did not happen.
This is a very simple answer. We did it wrong so many times. So we tried for years, because when we started back in, I think 2013, 14-ish, we wanted to focus only on the technical aspects, me and my team. People would make fun of us. They would be like, okay, there are whitehead SEOs and there are people who have traffic, and all these kind of amazing jokes going our way that you cannot really
that was a nice one.
I can create a stand-up show for you with just the feedback we would get from the SEO community back in the day, with basically moving to a technical side of things only. This was very
bonus episode right there.
This was very weird for a second. Usually we start with stakeholders. I'm gonna condense it really quick. We talk to the stakeholders, we hop on a call before creating any offers or anything. We hop on a call, talk about like what's the KPI, what's the problem, what are the challenges, why are we even doing that? Like, why is so important? Like, why do you want to fix that? Because if traffic is the only metric, we still will work with them, but we know how this might go. So we're going to start with that. Then after the call, we look into their website, we create a statement of work. So we tell them, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is the list of problems we're seeing with your website. This is how we want to fix it. Prioritize. So first month, we solve all of the most terrible aspects, like internal 404s, or I don't know, 10 seconds to load a page, whatever. So and with that, it's extremely transparent, because we tell them, okay, this project is going to take 4 months. We're going to hop in, and now this is actually a spoiler alert. We're going to hop into a PM, so like Jira or Trello, with your dev team, and we're going to make it happen.
Okay, so you meet the dev team where they are anyway.
So, and we adjust to whatever solution that they go with. So if they work in sprints, we try to join that. Like, however this is, we had to kind of morph into this team that joins them without any interruptions. So this is the only way. We are aware that, like, in a medium or large company, the dev team is usually the most important part of the business. So then we tell them, okay, this has to be fixed, but we have to understand their tech stack. We have to understand all these boring aspects. Like, boring, like, we love them, but usually during that call with stakeholders, they don't really want to talk about that, or they don't know. Like, very often stakeholders have no idea what kind of tech stack they are running.
To be fair, they should not have to, right? Like, that's something, unless it's like the CTO, I don't think the CEO needs to know which tech stack they are on, as long as they know what their core business is, how it works, and what's the vision, what's the mission of the organization. I think that's exactly what you have a development team for, to define these things based on requirements coming from elsewhere.
one more conversation we have to schedule, but let's move forward with that. Then we hop into like Jira, Trello, whatever. We give them tasks, and they come back to us like, we cannot really do that. We have a custom solution around this one that doesn't allow whatever. So then, and again, we have a team that's extremely technical. This is something we were building for a few years, and they hop on a call. We either sometimes when they really don't get that, and this is an edge case, we write a snippet of code just to show them how to optimize that CSS or whatever. But most of the time we just go and talk to them, and they would, like, devs in my opinion, they're very hardworking people, and they would tell us like, we cannot do this, we cannot do that, we have so many limitations. And we try to work within those limitations. If we hit the wall, we go back to stakeholders and say, maybe we could try to, and devs appreciate that, because someone is really, it's not only them coming to stakeholders for budget, for more resources, whatever, but we're gonna come in and say, okay, guys, this is gonna be difficult with so many places where you cut corners.
So you would say that you would also have to somehow support as developers to get the right resources and to get the right environment to work in. Sometimes that's interesting.
Sometimes, yes. Sometimes this is gonna sound funny, but sometimes we have clients who have like 50 devs and not in not in a country where they would be cheaper, but 50 devs in a very high earning city somewhere in the world, and they would listen to us rather than to them, because they're like, okay, we're paying your invoice. we wanna get the most bang for our buck. So because of that, and they would tell that openly, we want to really move this project forward. And that's why they would change things around in the dev team. And I guess you have to know that out of all people, sometimes when you work in a team, you come to your manager, you say, okay, this is a problem every day. They won't listen to you until someone from the outside is gonna come in and say, like, dude.
I've been there, I've done that. I've been on both sides of this. I've been the consultant that came in and basically just sat down with the development team, listened to them for a day, and then presented what I heard to the stakeholders, and they're like, oh, these are really valuable insights. And I always thought, like, I'm billing you for this, but you could have just listened to your developers.
Exactly. And I guess every single dev listening to or watching this video series right now is gonna have a story of this kind. And we also have
I've been on the developer side of that too. It's like, hey, we need to do this. Oh, I don't think so. And then I was like, okay. And then the consultant came in and said the same thing. I'm like,
so. And also, just to elaborate on this story, we have, like, usually once a quarter, we have someone reaching out to us, usually the dev teams we know, saying like Bartosz, we need an audit around core vitals, but don't go too deep. We just want them to hear what we told them from someone else, and they're willing to spend budget just to have a backup document, just to say we need to fix this. So,
but that is so smart. I really like that, because so many developers are like, oh, I don't want to work with these people because they just tell them what we told them already and they charge them for it. Why don't developers more often leverage these external voices like they do in your case, where it's like, Bartosz, I need this audit. I know the result of the audit, but please, like, tell them what we already told them, because they don't listen.
Every single time this is happening, I've always
that is smart. I like that.
If there's any SEO agency listening to that, or SEO, like someone frustrated with dev teams, 100% honest, we don't struggle with devs. Like, talking to them openly, speaking their language, and you might have to get a little bit technical, or maybe just have one or two people in your team who can get the message across.
Oh, and just to add on to your last point, and that goes to all the SEOs out there listening, struggling with developers, lose your ego. It is not a problem to ask us developers questions. Like, if you are thinking that you need to know everything, no, you don't. You're not a developer. It's okay. Developers don't know about SEO. You don't have to know everything about development. So if you don't understand why they can't do what you ask them to do, remember that developers are intrinsically motivated by or for solving problems. That's what they love. That's what they want to do. So if you give them something to solve, they'll be excited to solve it, and then they hit the limitations, the limits of what they can do in the tech stack and the environment that they are in, and then they tell you, I can't do that because XYZ. If you don't understand XYZ, that is okay. Ask clarifying questions until you get there, because you, and I think Bartosz said that really nicely, you may have to simplify that message that comes from the developers so that other people who are not developers in the organization that you work with understand why it doesn't work.
Let me just build on that. And this is something that all the SEOs are going to love. We had that vision years back that we have to learn all of the frameworks, we have to know front end, back end, whatever. It was so stressful. I was learning all these I was trying to know it all. But this is something, leave it to devs. What we have to do as technical SEOs, we have to have in-depth, massive understanding how rendering works, how a browser works, how Google is rendering, what they render, what they do, rules around that. Chrome DevTools, this has to be your go-to place, and you need to understand what's happening, what are the and once you understand that, you add a little bit of documentation from different frameworks, from different different technologies, but don't learn how to write all of this code. Obviously basics are okay, but basics, this is what they pay you to do. They don't want you to know what they know. so you have to know, this is complex enough. Understanding how a browser works step by step, this is something you can do for the rest of your life and never have enough of learning. Just wanted to add, now we were talking from the SEO standpoint with the ego. If you own a company, if you run a dev team, go through a lot of agencies, talk to them, hop on a call with them, ask them questions, see if you understand what they're trying to do. If you're talking to an agency that's going to tell you nothing about the scope of work, what they're going to do, how they're going to do that, this would raise a red flag. If you go with your car to have it fixed and they won't tell you what they did, I would be worried to drive this car. So basically go through that. Talk to as many people as soon as you feel the vibe. Okay, these guys, they understand what we want to accomplish, and get this conversation.
And the same, the other way, it's absolutely true. Developers really don't like it when someone comes hey, you need to do this, and then they ask you why, and then they don't get a proper answer. You can do the same thing with developers. If you say hey, I want you to implement the canonicals, and then they say we can't do that, then ask them why. If they say our solution doesn't allow it, then it's why does it not allow you? Does it not allow you to add anything to the head? Oh, it does, but not the canonical. Why not the canonical? It might be just a knowledge gap on their side, or it might be an actual hard technical limitation of the environment and the stack and the platform they're working with. But they need to be able to explain this to you in simple terms. If they're oh, it's algorithmically impossible, that's just a developer's way of saying bugger off. Ask questions. Don't think oh, they said something that I don't understand, so I must stop questioning here. No, if they can't express it in simple terms so that you understand what they mean, they haven't done the work themselves either. So hold them accountable, but be ready to be held accountable too.
Yeah, just wanted to hop on. We don't know stuff very, very often. We have 5 calls per day with 5 different stacks. Some we never heard about. So if we don't know something, we're very open about it. We have no idea what we had for WOMP, PWA recently. I was I never heard of WOMP. We just went and read the documentation, came back, scheduled a call. We're now, we can talk the same language. Again, this is an ego thing. You don't assume that you need to know stuff. I'm very open about things I don't know. There's just tons of them. So
same here. Yeah.
That's
I mean, even I was asked recently at a Core Web Vitals session. I was asked questions that I don't know the answer to. I won't give you a random non-answer or try to meddle my way through. I'll just say I don't know, but I can check.
Yeah, and one thing that I feel is a deal breaker between devs and the SEOs a lot of times. And we back in the day were guilty of that as well. Is devs will ask you a question of like, why shouldn't we just point canonicals to a page that's most important? So we sculpt like we push the most important page with different canonicals because this is just like a link. They would have all these ideas as well, like both SEOs and devs, how to cheat the search engine. Yeah, like SEOs, you have to explain that step by step. But if we're talking about SEOs and devs, we need to leave all of the conspiracy theories or urban legends behind. Just fall back on documentation, and that's it. Because as soon as open the door into, if we point some canonicals here, or if we do this, or if we do that, some some things might happen. We heard about that. We tested that. This is gonna put you in the shoes of those, snake oil salesmen. So be technical. If you're talking to devs, be technical. Drop all of those. Even if you deeply believe this is the case, I think this opens the door to what we as SEOs wanna run away from.
Another thing is, if you are not very technical, that is perfectly okay. But then don't try to find solutions, because you are in a territory where you are not necessarily experienced in. And if you are not just basically present the problem and then work with the development team to solve that, don't try to come up with a solution, because it's likely that your solution will not work in the tech stack or the environment that your development team works in. And then if you are getting attached to that solution, you're like, but why can't we just do it like this? It might not get through to the development team the right way, and it might feel like you're just obsessed with something rather than actually trying to solve the problem. And that's what the development teams need to do. So you want to be on their side, and it's okay to go the way together, like basically to research options, to experiment with things together. But trying to come with a turnkey solution to development teams usually backfires.
Just one thing that's gonna, I hope, is gonna clean the air a little bit. Technical SEO is fairly new. It's maybe 3, 4, 5 years old. Obviously, some will argue that this was, I was doing technical SEO in 1993, but it's fairly new, as in a way that this is getting so popular. It's getting so needed. It's almost essential. So this is a brand new field, and if you look at that and drop all of the history, this is gonna get really exciting, because now I would assume that devs and SEOs will only get closer throughout the next few years, because obviously we're all seeing that need for technical SEO.
I think that would clear the air, and for all of those who are scared and confused now on the SEO side, you get to choose if you want to get into technical SEO or not. Technical SEO is a field in its own. It is complex, it is big, it is broad, it is new, it is fresh. But I think content still is an important field, and all the other things, all the other aspects inside SEO will not become irrelevant or anything. It will continue to be a broad field. You get to pick your niche. But if you want to go technical, do it right. I think that's a very, very nice way of looking at it.
Go technical.
Go technical. Awesome. Thank you so much, Bartosz, for joining me for this conversation. I think this was really interesting and insightful, and I hope to see more from you guys, and also to hear what the community is saying to these things as well. Looking forward. Stay safe, stay healthy, everybody.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much.
Avec les anges, si pure, la mer bergère d'azur, infinie. Voyez.